Hi, my name's Ann Hince, and I've just recorded an episode with Kim that hopefully you're going to listen to right here. I am no one special. I was a stay-at-home mother, just carrying on with life, but I knew I had to change, and I did, and I developed some superpowers that I'm going to tell you about here today that you can develop too, to become peaceful on the inside. So we had a great conversation that I hope you're going to enjoy, and please enjoy it and contact me if you have any questions at the end. Thank you.
Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Kim Sorrell. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. I get to do a lot of great things in life, but the best thing that I get to do is meet incredible people. And today is, of course, no exception. In fact, this person, Ann Hince, that you're going to meet today, you're going to fall in love with, and you're going to want to know what she's doing, and you're going to want to read everything she writes and go to her website because she has insights that she's going to share that will rock your world. And so without further ado, Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So you've lived quite a life, and you do. You've got some great insights and you've broken some barriers that other people have not. And so I'm excited to talk to you, but I want everyone to get to know you. So Ann, with your beautiful accent, what was 8-year-old Ann like? Where were you? What were you doing? What were you like?
Let's see, when I was 8, I was in Hong Kong.
Yes.
And yeah, life there was okay. For that first year in Hong Kong, I had a lot of things happen in my childhood. The external makes it sounds like, oh, it could be quite exotic because I lived in all sorts of different countries. But the inner world was not quite as pleasant. But when we were in Hong Kong, when I was 9, so the next year, I was sent to boarding school in England, which was fine, but happened to be my brother's boarding school. So it was a boys' boarding school. And I was the only girl boarder at that boys' boarding school for the first year. So it was horrific. The boys just teased me mercilessly. So that ended up being one of my big traumas in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. And then they put you like in the sick bay or something too? Like you didn't have a regular dorm room?
Right, they didn't have dorm rooms. So, yes, I had a bedroom in the sick bay. And then the second year, there were two more day girl boarders, and they gave us a room over the principal's office,
Oh.
actually over his apartment. So, we couldn't make too much noise. I guess they could also check on the boys. They would hear maybe if the boys came in too, but it
Yeah.
wasn't fun.
No, what an interesting life. You've had such an interesting life. You've got an incredible adoption story. You've got incredible stories about so many things. And so what would you say are some for everyone to get to know you really well? What are a couple super pivotal moments in your childhood that kind of rocked your world, changed things for you, disrupted your life?
Okay, well, I'll say the big one first because all the others were kind of hidden underneath when I uncovered them when I started to do my inner work. And the big one was when I was 19, I found my mother one morning dead on the bathroom floor in a pool of blood. So she had had throat and lung cancer from drinking and smoking. Both my parents were alcoholics in my teenage years. So she had lung cancer and throat cancer, and a tumor in her throat had burst, and she died. So that was a massive trauma. But then, excuse me, there was another one in Hong Kong actually that had been suppressed underneath those big emotions from that event. And that was when we were driving through this really busy outside market in Hong Kong. And my dad had such a short temper, and he got really angry, and he would seethe and spittle would come out of his face out of his mouth because he was so angry. And he couldn't drive very fast because there were people all around. And so he was moving the steering wheel backward and forward and just so angry. And trigger warning everyone, he drove over a girl's ankle when she was there holding her mother's hand. So all these, he was obviously upset and got out of the car, but my brother and I were in the back seat of the car, and these crowds of people, Chinese people who didn't speak English, moved around, kind of swarmed to the car. So that was a very intense trauma that, as I said, it had been hidden underneath my mother's trauma, and I didn't remember it until I was in my late 30s.
Wow. 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 That's so interesting. That had to be, there's these moments in our lives that stay locked. And like you can revisit them and it's as if you're still there, or as if you've kind of never left it. Like, you have these memories, you had a birthday cake, you remember that, when you were 11 or whatever, but it's so kind of vague. And the older you get, the more vague it becomes. But then you have these moments that are unforgettable, that just are there. And so how do you deal with that? Like with being swarmed, I mean, that had to be so many emotions that played into that. Fear is certainly one of them. And so how do you uh, deal with that? How do you deal with those?
Well, at the time, I just suppressed it. I
Yeah.
think most of us do. We're kind of taught to suppress our emotions. It certainly happened in my family, right? We were never allowed to talk about what happened inside the house, outside the house. So even though my dad would drink so much that he would, pass out on the floor and just sleep for hours, we couldn't say anything about that. We couldn't have people come to the house. My best friend was so afraid of coming to the house to visit because my dad would get so angry. And even someone ringing the doorbell, that was a big trigger for him. He would just seethe with anger, and then he'd open the door and act all calm and like normal. He put on a facade. So that was all stored inside of me, and it gets stored inside of all of us if we don't deal with the emotions at the time. We just store them inside, and we have no idea how much it's stored inside in our subconscious mind. It blows my mind sometimes when I realize how much is stored inside, because I became a so one of the other things was, I guess, when I was born with my right foot up against my right shin. So my whole body was kind of torqued, twisted, and I've had scoliosis my whole life. So in those first 6 weeks before I was handed over for adoption, they did a little physical therapy type stuff and released my foot. But they didn't work on the rest of my body. And as I became aware deeper and deeper inside, excuse me, I became aware of this amazing pain in my left cheek that was just almost unbearable. It had been hidden in my subconscious mind for 50 years. I'd not been aware of it, but it was connected all the way through my body down to my right foot. But it had been hidden, right? So we hide so much in our subconscious mind, in our body, that we can release it, but we sometimes have to go through those emotions again or that pain again.
Yeah, well, PTSD, right? I mean, yeah, it is interesting how things just kind of come up, bubble up when they do, and you're not even thinking about it, not even focusing on it, but then something triggers that memory, triggers that emotion, and all of a sudden, something that you've hidden for years comes rising to the surface, and can be such a block in your life, and stop you from doing other things, stop you from being completely who you're created to be. And so it is interesting how that happens. So what do you do? How do you handle it when all of a sudden you remember the Hong Kong incident, or your cheek hurts?
Right. Well, it wasn't until I was in my late 30s that I actually realized that any of my childhood was affecting me. It took me that long. And it took a big incident for that memory to come up. And for me, it was a memory of how I reacted when my dad did something or told me I'd done something wrong, because a similar event happened. It was at my boys' school, and there were two other mothers, and these mothers were not like me. They were very self confident, self assured, authority type women in my mind, so kind of like my dad was to me. And they told me I'd done something wrong. And I just could not stop my mind spinning. It just went over and over everything that I'd said, what they'd said, what I did, what I could have done differently, just all those different permutations. It spun for 3 days. My mind, I could hardly sleep, and I just could not stop it happening. It was crazy. And at the end of that, I realized, okay, this is not normal. Okay, no one else I knew would have reacted that intensely to something like that. But I also realized it felt a little bit like how I would react when my dad told me I'd done something wrong. So that was the first little opening. Oh, maybe something from my childhood is affecting me.
Right.
Not knowing, of course, how much was affecting me. It was huge. But that was just my little opening that maybe, okay, maybe I should look at this. Maybe I should do something about it. But I didn't know what to do. I had no idea how to go about it. But it was in that time frame that I went to a doctor's appointment, and this doctor was a holistic physician. So he had more tools in his toolbox than most doctors do. And he recognized I was stressed. I mean, I shouldn't have been. I was a stay at home mother with two healthy young boys, but I did have PTSD. And he recognized that. And so he asked me on a scale of 0 to 10 what my stress level was. And I said 8. And then he asked me why. And it was that question, just the question brought up, okay, immediately, okay, it's finding my mother dead on the bathroom floor. Because the tears from that event were still just under the surface. And this is now my late 30s, right? And she died when I was 19. So 20 years later, I still had all those tears that I had not shed. And so he used a technique that's called EFT, short for emotional freedom technique. It's also called tapping because we're tapping on certain places in our body. Are you familiar with the technique?
I'm familiar with tapping. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So he tapped with me about my mother's death for about 15 minutes, and I let those tears flow. And I went home from that realizing that we hold those memories and those emotions physically in our body, and we can let them go. And before that, I had not known that was possible. So I went home and I learned everything I could about EFT because at the time it was given away for free. It still is. Anyone can learn it for free. Um, and I wanted to work out if it's really, was it a fluke? Was it a one-time thing with this doctor, or was it really the technique? So I started to research it, learned everything I could, and then I tried it out as an experiment on something that I was doing with my cat. And I realized how powerful it was. And that's then what I started to do when anything happened, when I was triggered, when I was emotional, I would use this technique and bring myself back to peace and then move on with my day.
Oh, wow. So I'm familiar, but not everybody's going to be familiar with tapping. So can you break it down and share with people what it does and what it is, the power?
Sure, I just lost you for a moment. Okay, it's a technique that is really simple. And I think that's why a lot of people don't keep using it because it doesn't look like it can be doing much. But what we're doing is we're working on acupressure points or acupuncture points, so meridian systems. We're tapping on specific points, which are the ends of specific meridians. And that's because the nervous system has a memory of what it used to do, what it's used to doing when it brings up a memory or when it's triggered. It does the same thing each time because those memories are stored in the body with those emotions. So the tapping interrupts the nervous system so it can let that energy go and change how the nervous system reacts in the future to the same trigger or the same event. So that's all you're doing. You're talking through what happened or how you're feeling, and the tapping releases the energy from the body. So it's a long-term fix. It's not a short-term thing. Right? You can actually change the way you react by doing this. So it's that simple. There's 9 points that you tap on. You say, you verbalize how you're feeling or what happened. So I would talk through, I tapped on my mother's story multiple times, which is something you want to do as well. You want to tap through it from beginning to end. So I'd say, okay, I woke up in the morning and there was no noise. And normally she would have the radio on. So I would talk through what happened that day. And then I'd go back to the beginning, talk through it again. And the subconscious mind opens up. So you become aware of details of the story that you had hidden underneath those big emotions. And so you keep doing it until you remember all the aspects of the story and there's no emotion left anymore. And at that point, unbelievable as it might be, the memories stop coming up. The thoughts stop coming up. Now, you can still access the memory, but it's not affecting you in your day-to-day life anymore. So it makes a huge difference.
Ah, no kidding. It would make a huge difference because there are things that trigger way faster than other things, and it's negative triggers that do affect your day to day, that can affect how you show up in the world, how you show up at your job, how you show up for your family, and how you show up for yourself. And so, can you tell us the nine tapping areas?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
So the first one is on the karate chop point, which is the side of the hand. If you were going to do a karate chop, you tap there and you kind of do an opening phrase there. And I tend to say something like, even though I'm feeling frustrated right now, that's my truth. And it's okay that I'm feeling frustrated. So we're really trying to accept the way we feel. And then we go on to the first main point, which is the crown point on the top of the head. And you just shorten it and you say something like this frustration. And then the next point is the beginning of the eyebrows. And you tap there. And you're tapping firm enough to make a difference, but you don't want to hurt yourself. So it's just kind of a medium tap. And you might say, well, I'm frustrated because something happened. You can say what happened. The next point is the bone on the edge of the eye. I'm frustrated with that person. The next point is the bone under the eye. I'm really frustrated. Next point is on the upper lip, under the nose. I'm frustrated. Next point is on the chin. I'm really frustrated. It's kind of the dimple between your lower lip and the bottom of your chin. I'm frustrated. Two more points. The collarbone point, and I use two hands here, but you can use one, it doesn't matter. I'm frustrated. And then the last point is underneath the arm where the bra strap goes across, if you have one. I'm really frustrated. And then you take a deep breath, you let it go, and that's one round of EFT.
Wow.
Now
And
you'll do
that,
it again. You'll do it again and again. You might change the words, right? As the big emotions release, the ones that are underneath, or the thoughts or memories that are underneath, will pop into your mind, or you'll realize you're feeling differently. Then you will use those words, and that's how you go layer by layer by layer, cleaning out the wound that was inside of you.
yeah, that's so interesting. Well, and it's something that's been around, right? Like this isn't something that all of a sudden some person went, oh gosh, if I tap my head, I feel so much better, right?
Yeah, it's been around a long time. Gary Craig put it out there to the public about 20, 25 years ago. He was a chemical engineer, which helped me because I was a software engineer. I like to know, someone really knows what they're doing. And over the years, it's kind of morphed. It's kind of morphed more towards the positive thinking arena. But what I've realized, at this point, we haven't talked about it yet, but at this point, I can put my awareness inside my body. And I know that all we're looking for is the darkness or the tension, which is the negative. Once we release the negative, the tension releases, the light flows back in. So all we need to find is the negative. And that's where the power of EFT is. It's working on the negative that's stored in the body. The positive doesn't get stored the same way. I don't know where the positive gets stored. I just feel the negative when I'm going inside. So when we work with EFT, we want to tap on the negative. So if, for example, you're trying to change something, there's the two aspects. There's the something that you want. Maybe you want a new car, right? There's that's kind of more of a positive thing. That's what you want. But what is the actual thing? What's the actual truth? Is you don't have the car you want right now, right? So that would be what you want to tap on. You could then tap on, I want a new car, and it will work on the resistance that you have to getting the new car. It won't make you get the new car. It'll release the resistance you have to allow the new car to flow. Yeah, do you see the difference there?
Yes, yeah. Gosh, that's so good. So as you're working on all this, though, you made some pretty remarkable self-discoveries.
I did, yes. Yes. So I did a lot of EFT in those first few years. I worked with it whenever I could. I I was so desperate to change. I was so emotional and reactionary that I knew I had to change. And I had two young boys at the time, and life at home was kind of too hectic for me. It was overwhelming so much of the time. So I had to change. Also, I had two boys, and I went to a boys' boarding school. So I was scared of boys in the age range 9 through 13. So I knew I had to change myself before my boys got to that age because I did not want to be scared of my boys. So I had incentive to change. So what I did is during the day, I would ask myself, how am I feeling right now? And I would answer myself because in that moment of going inside, working out what it is you're feeling, you're starting to release that energy. So I would ask myself that multiple times a day. And if I didn't like how I felt, I would tap on it and I'd bring myself back to peace. And I realized that I was becoming less reactionary, which is what I really wanted. But I wanted it more and I wanted it faster. So I wrote down every emotional memory I could think of from my childhood. Now, the one with the mark, it wasn't on that list to begin with because I didn't remember it. But as I remembered things, I would add them to the list. So it's kind of a growing list. And each night for an hour to an hour and a half, I would tap on one of those events until I'd cleared it. And so I did one every night for weeks and weeks and weeks. And things really started to change. So my subconscious mind started to open up. And as that happens, our self-awareness deepens. And what that means is you become aware of yourself. So when I started this journey, I was not aware of my emotions. So if someone had asked me how I was feeling, I would always say fine, because I was too scared to go inside and notice how I actually felt. So I became aware of my emotions. But as these weeks went by, I realized I was also becoming aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions. So if we're feeling something like frustration, which we tapped on, we're actually saying we're frustrated because we're feeling a certain way inside of our body. So I became aware of what that was, where I was holding tension. So for me, frustration is tension across the solar plexus. But for other people, it might be different. But I was not aware of that. Are you aware of that level?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I'd have to think about that, but that's a good question.
Yeah, and that's how we learn the names of emotions when we're children, right? We'll see someone sad, or we'll see someone who looks sad, and someone will say, "Oh, that person is sad," right? Or we'll be sad, and someone will say, "Oh, you're sad," right? And we learn to feel that feeling that we're feeling right then is called sad. So this is kind of reversing that process, becoming like little children again. We're reversing that process. So I became at that aware at that level, and then I would start to feel my feelings, feel those sensations each day instead of doing the tapping. I didn't need to. I could focus by that point deeply enough that I could feel those sensations and those emotions. So I would do that all the time, and at night I would bring up more collective traumas, right? Things like 9/11 or the Loma Prieta earthquake I was in the Bay Area. I would bring those memories to mind because we all had our own individual memories of those specific events. And I would just feel, I would allow myself to feel the emotions and the sensations that came up. And at some point during that process, I realized I could put my awareness inside my body and I could keep it there. And that was totally new, totally weird. Never heard of it before. And so I just started to play. I realized I could do it once. Could I do it again? Because as soon as I thought, as soon as I came back into my mind and thought a thought rather than felt, I would come out of my body. So I had to be out of my thinking mind, in my sensing mind, while I stayed inside my body. And then I just played. I could move my awareness around, find tension versus no tension, and I would focus on the tension. Exactly the same way that we're tapping when we just tapped about focusing on the frustration. Now I'm inside the body focusing on the tension directly. So it's the same process, just at a deeper level of self-awareness. And during this process, once I was able to put my awareness inside my head, I could feel things release. I could feel adhesions in the connective tissue. I could hear them release with my ears. It felt like fabric ripping. And over the years, I've actually released enough tension in my skull that my skull has relaxed into more alignment, and I have x-rays to show that. And I've grown 3/4 of an inch in my 50s because of that release of the burden and the flexibility that I've gained now in my neck that I didn't have before.
Wow, it is so amazing. I'm so glad that we're talking because this isn't something that I've heard of before, uh, because I think it's pretty rare. You can tell me, but there's so much that we don't tap into that is inside of us that we're able to do. You know, our mind is so strong, and they talk about your three brains, right? Your heart, your stomach, your mind, and but we have so much more awareness when we realize that we do, right? Or there's so much more that we can do. And you know, if you think about it, like when people go get home from work and their neck hurts, right? Or they've got a headache back here from stress or whatever it happens to be, or other parts of your body that might get stiff or tense, tense up, parts of your body tense, and we even say that it's tensing up, and probably because of the tension that's within the emotional tension rather than that manifests itself as a physical tension.
Right, we're not aware of so much, but at that point, right, if you get home at night and you can feel if you're aware of that tension there, that is just the surface level of your awareness. You probably got a lot more tension inside in your neck that you're not aware of yet. And that's what I came to realize. And it still blows my mind how much. I mean, I never focused on my neck ever in my life before, not at all. But when I put my awareness inside my body and started releasing at that deeper level, I realized every single time I released tension somewhere in my body, it always also released in my neck. And I think that's the connection to the brain, right? There's all that connective tissue just connects up through our neck. So there is so much tension there. And I hadn't realized before that, I mean, I guess I just wasn't aware of it, right? So I'd never thought about it before. But we're supposed to be able to move our head on top of our neck. Now, I used to only be able to move my head with my neck. My head wouldn't move independently. I can see yours does, but mine didn't. It does now because I've released so much tension in my jaw and in my neck. And that flexibility again is more like becoming little children, right? We're becoming flexible again. But it's not just flexibility in physical flexibility, it's also the mind, right? When we become more physically flexible, we're also more mentally flexible. We can see from other people's points of view many ways. And when you think about children or even students, right, young adults, they're so much more flexible in their minds. They're able to see from other people's points of view. They're often more empathetic for other people because they can do that. And as we go on through life, right, we tend to become more conservative, more tight, and that's because we're thinking the same thoughts over and over again, because we have those same memories stored inside of us, or the same traumas. And we just clench that connective tissue tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's why we tend to shrink as we age, right? If you look at a photo of someone young and vibrant and then the same person old, it's often the neck that has shrunk, right? So this work reverses that process.
Wow, that's so interesting. So is this something you're able to teach people how to do?
Totally, yes. I only know one person who's been able to put their awareness inside their body. Like I have a friend that I've been able to work with a lot. But people can certainly get through those first two steps, right? Doing the EFT, becoming more peaceful inside, becoming less reactionary, and becoming aware of the physical sensations. And that itself is huge, because at that point, people also start to become aware of different senses at a deeper level too. So I used to have a group and we'd meet once a week, and at the beginning of the group I'd play a series of chimes, And I'd have people listen and feel to the chimes. And then at the end, everyone would say what they experienced. Now, some people would only hear them with their ears, but many people could feel them in different parts of their body, right? Which is a deeper level of self-awareness. And those people tended to be ones who had opened up more, right? They were more more vulnerable, willing to be more vulnerable. And they had done some of this inner work already. But think about that for a moment. When you can hear with not just your ears, but you can sense with your body, you're going to pick up things in conversations when you're talking or hearing other people speak, right? And music has a totally different quality when you could feel it in your body and not just hear it with your ears. So that's huge.
Yeah, that is so huge. Well, and I wonder, and if people do it sometimes and aren't so aware of it, like, there are songs certainly that bring up emotion, right? Because it's you heard that song when you were 17 years old and you were dating that guy and you were on cloud nine, or whatever. So that song comes on the radio again, and you think, and immediately your mind goes back to that time. And so we probably do hear and just don't even realize that that's what we're doing, but consciously doing it is probably different than subconsciously doing it.
Well, this is kind of subconscious. I mean, it's just happening. So what you're talking about is more like a memory was triggered and the emotions came back up, right? What I'm talking about is feeling the sound vibrations move physically through your body, right? So it's not connected to thoughts or memories. It's just, so let's do this. I like this exercise. So if you can do this, it's only going to take a second. So I want you to go to your right knee and tell me how your right knee feels right now.
Um, it feels it feels a little sore, actually.
Okay. Okay. So in that moment, when you went to your right knee, you went inside and you felt, you sensed. Then you put words to that. So when you put words to something, you're going back into your thinking mind. But for a moment, you were sensing. That is what I'm talking about, where you can just feel what's happening in your body without the thinking mind intervening in any way, right? It's that momentary sensing. So if you can sense with your whole body and feel what's happening as music is playing, that is what I'm talking about. Do you see the
Wow.
difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Holy cow. Yeah, you broke that down in such a easy, understandable way. So thank you for that. I mean, that makes so much sense.
You're welcome. So that's what I'm doing when I'm going inside and going inside my skull, inside my tissues and bones. I'm just feeling it. I'm just sensing it. But I now can hold my awareness or my attention on it for multiple seconds, long enough that it's been given the attention that it needs and it releases.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow. Which that's what you're aiming for, is the release. And what an incredible feeling. And you said that sometimes you even hear the release.
I do. Yes, often. And my neck cracks probably 50 times a day at this point.
Yeah.
But, I would have liked there not to have been as many layers to release when I started this journey. I didn't want it to go on for so long, but I have a lot of work to do.
What's amazing is here you are, and you're helping so many people, and you've got all this wisdom that had you not gone through all that, you wouldn't be in the same place, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for going through all that trauma so you can help people. I appreciate that so much.
You're welcome. I try and thank my parents too. I mean, they're no longer around, either of them, but I do realize I had to do it in order to get to where I am now. So it's okay. Everything I went
Yeah.
through was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So good and so interesting. And one thing that I read about you is that you have a different view on the law of attraction. We hear about the law of attraction, right? but you have sort of a different take on it. You come from a different angle.
Yes, I do. I mean, a lot of people who talk about the law of attraction, they just talk about words and thoughts. And I've realized by doing this work that it's more than just our words and our thoughts, right? It's everything about us. We're almost like one huge big signal. And my signal has long hair that's turning gray, that's curly. And my signal is that, I'm a 5'5" woman, right? But if I shaved my hair off and I went out into society, I would attract different results, different thoughts in people, different, people would say different things to me based on my change of signal. But the biggest thing about our signal is that tension stored inside of us from our past, from our traumas. It's massive. See, I didn't realize this when I started this work, but I realized what I'm releasing tension is the connective tissue. I think that might even be our subconscious mind. They might be one and the same. But connective tissue can pull with a force of 2,000 pounds per square inch. So we are pulled out of alignment with a massive force, but we're not aware of it, right? That's the key point. We're just not aware of how out of alignment we are and the forces that are pulling us out of alignment until we do this really deep inner work and we can actually become aware of that massive force. I mean, the pain and force in my cheek was just almost unbearable. I could only focus on it for maybe a second at a time when I started because it was so huge. And it was pulling me totally out of alignment, right? My head, it's still off to the side, but it was way off to the side. So that is massive. That tension inside of us is massive. And that is what's attracting. We're putting off a signal and we're attracting into our future based on the signal that we're emitting. So if we change the signal that we're emitting, we're going to attract different things. And doing this work, the EFT, the bringing ourselves back to peace each time, that is changing a signal deep inside of us, right? It's a massive change to who we are. And then we attract different things. And it's hard to believe sometimes how things change. I mean, I had one of the ladies in that group I talked about. She went home that night after the group and she came back the next week and she said, "Does this work change other people?" Because she had gone home that night after tapping and met a totally different husband than she had left because she herself was different. So she attracted different things from her husband. And I found that in my household too. Our household became peaceful and quiet and fun, and it hadn't been before.
Wow, that's huge. That's huge. It does make sense though. I mean, obviously, because when you show up like you were talking about your dad being frustrated in traffic and just wanting to get out of there and ends up tragically, unfortunately, hurting a little girl, but that frustration and when you're around someone who's like so frustrated that you can also kind of get frustrated, right? Like because it and so like two people in the same traffic jam, if somebody is angry and upset and why is the traffic moving, honking their horn and their heads out the window and they're screaming, or whatever, the way they're going to show up for the next person is tense, shoulders rise and back tight and neck tight, and it's going to hard to just be hard to come in and go, "Hi, honey, how are you?" Right?
It is,
If
it is.
instead you dealt with the traffic jam by listening to some music, listening to a podcast, whatever, realizing there's nothing you can do about it, it's out of your control, you're going to show up a whole different way. You're going to come in and the "hi, honey" is going to be sincere. It's going to be real.
Right. The trouble is sometimes we can't do that, right? And another thing that I realized over the years is we often try and talk ourselves out of the emotions we are feeling. And what I realized, to get really deep, we have to notice them and acknowledge them, right? So if I was really annoyed in traffic, it's probably not a great example because people can't normally tap to begin with, but after a few months or years, you might be able to tap while you're in traffic. I would tap on how I was feeling, how frustrated I was, how stupid I thought that other person was, right? To allow myself to feel that emotion rather than try and avoid it by putting on music or something, right? I mean, that it does calm us down, but it doesn't get rid of it, right? The tapping actually gets rid of it and changes us at that deeper level. Whereas if we put music on, we're kind of just suppressing it or avoiding it for another time and it will come back up another time. But if we actually release it, it actually leaves from the body. So the biggest thing that time when I realized that that was true was in my kitchen one day and I realized that my mind was quiet. And I had never experienced that before. I'd always had these negative thoughts. I was very self-critical, self-judgmental of myself and others. So my mind was always busy judging or criticizing. And suddenly it wasn't. And I realized it was because I had been programmed with my dad's thoughts, my dad's words, the things he would say. I had taken them on as mine and replayed them over and over again. But once I tapped through the memories of things he used to say and what he did, they left. They were no longer there. They never, no longer came up in my mind, which was crazy. I'd never heard of that. I didn't know it could happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, yeah, which had to be a huge shift,
It was.
right?
It felt like I was living in a different reality.
Yeah. So how did you see yourself different?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, well, I became more self-confident. I mean, I wouldn't be talking on podcasts back then. I mean, I wouldn't even be talking, right? Because my dad used to tease my voice a lot. So I kind of shut down. It was easier not to talk. I didn't have to say anything. Then he couldn't judge me, he couldn't criticize me. So I just stopped talking. And here I am talking. So I became more self-confident. And that's also something that happens as we change physically, right? As we loosen up, our posture changes to become more confident, right? So I had never kind of connected all of those in the past, right? You can't just talk yourself to confidence. You have to become confident. And doing this work actually changes you so that you actually are confident inside and outside, right? It's not a facade. It's just who you are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I love that because there are so many things. You go to a workshop and they talk about how to gain confidence or how to show up confident or how to show up in some other positive, different way. But if you don't do the inner work, it sounds good. Like, you go to a I don't want to name names, but you go to some rah things, right? Go walk on coals, whatever. And you're like, oh, that was so good. And yes, yes, I'm confident. Yes, I'm that person. Yes. And then 3 days later, you're like, oh, I'm not really that person. You know,
Yes.
just I was then, but I'm not now because the inner work hasn't been done.
Right.
Right. It's just
Exactly.
words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So interesting. So interesting. So going back to the power of attraction, so many people talk about it and they talk about, if you say things out loud, that you will attract, whatever it is that you're wanting to attract. And we all kind of attract things naturally, differently. And I love the way you talked about how you look, even how you dress, how you appear to others, because we have all these thoughts in our head, and probably whether we realize it or not, we're automatically making assumptions about people, right? A guy coming in with a tank top and full of tattoos, you're going to look at differently or make different assumptions about than a guy in a three-piece suit looking all dapper, right? Well, he might be all tattooed underneath and you're just not seeing it. But we do whatever, like place people in different roles. And I've always kind of found that interesting and probably not healthy because when you meet somebody and you meet them, then the exterior doesn't matter, right?
Right. Right. But it's all based on our past experiences. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of us have been programmed and literally programmed from television programs when we were young. And that's why things like racism are systemic, right? They're subconscious. We don't realize we're doing that, but we've seen it over and over and over again. And we've maybe held ourselves tight as we're watching a program that's got suspense in it and someone who has tattoos is there with a knife or something, right? We're holding ourselves tight and we're programming ourselves to consider that memory again next time we see someone who has tattoos. So it's all programmed inside of us. So this work can release all of that, because I think that there's that spiritual concept of we are all one. To get there, we have to release our judgment around every single person so that we can see them as just ourselves. And it takes working with those triggers. You triggered now. So many triggers are subconscious. We're just not aware of them, right? So that's why we have to work through the big stuff first, right? That's why I had to work through my mother's death and the big traumas in my life. Then you start to see the more subtle ones. So I watched the news. Now, for many years, I did not watch the news because it was too much. I had too much stuff inside of me. I couldn't take any more, right? But I've cleared that out now. I will watch the news and I will notice how I feel. I will pay attention to what it's triggering inside of me, because then I can work with that trigger and I can heal at a deeper level. So it takes time to get to that place. But to me, the ultimate goal is to get to the place where I am imperturbable, where I can stand at peace, I can remain at peace, remain in my power, regardless of what is happening around me. But it takes a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, but what a beautiful place to live. What a beautiful place to be when and I think about it this way, different than what you've done, or along with what you've done, and on a so much deeper level or so much bigger level, is even recognizing things that we do, right? Without even thinking that we do. Like somebody's dressed a certain way and we make a certain assumption, and letting that go, figuring out a way to let that go and realize don't put a label on somebody, just wait and figure out who they are and see yourself in them. I love that. That's so powerful. When you can see them as yourself, that's so great. I've never heard it put that way before, but I love that.
Good. Now,
But
sometimes it takes accepting the way we're judging them. Like, even though we may not like that we're judging them that way, it's stored inside of us. So if we accept that judgment, maybe I think that person's overweight, right? And I could tap, if I was using EFT, I could tap on that person's overweight, that person's overweight. And how does it make me feel? It makes me feel uncomfortable. It makes me feel sorry for them. I'm concerned about their future. Whatever it is, right? It's opening up that which is a wound inside of us. It's a small wound, but it's still a wound inside of us. And so we accept it, acknowledge those thoughts we're having, and not push them away, but just notice them, acknowledge them. And that's when they leave, right? When they've had enough attention, those thoughts will leave.
yeah, wow. Wow, that's so good. So that's the way to get rid of racism, and right? I mean, yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
I never have heard this before, Ann, and I love it because it's you would think that in 2025 there would be less judgment, or there would be, we'd be rid of so much from the past, and we'd realize the value of people, of individuals, but it still exists, and like you said, systemically.
Yeah.
And it's a real issue, and that people don't want to recognize.
Because it's programmed into us, it's subconscious. Right? So you've got to do the deep work to find what's stored inside and then release it. So yeah, it would be really nice to get rid of it. It just takes work.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. Okay, what other great wisdom do you want to drop on us? Because you just go at it, man. You've just given us so much. I appreciate it so much, but I want to hear more, because uh, I mean, your experience is for real. It's not something you're just talking about. It's something that you worked through for a long time, so you can help other people get to the same point of peace. I'd like to grow 3/4 of an inch. My very short mother married a very short man, so I would love to grow 3/4 of an inch. So tell me about
Okay.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that really helped me early on was just realizing that emotions are simply energy that's stuck in the body, right? So we don't have to get attached to them. If we can see it as just energy, stuck in the body. And all we have to do is find it and release it. Then it's gone. Right? That helped me not get attached to it. Kind of comes from the experiment I did with my cat. So let me talk through that.
Yeah.
I was trying out EFT. I wanted to know if it worked. And my cat was dying. He was 17 and his kidneys were failing. So I had to give him a daily saline shot. So like an injection with a needle of saline every day. And the first time I did it, my hand was shaking so badly. I knew mentally I wasn't going to be able to do it every day. It was just too overwhelming for me. And so I thought, well, let me tap about it because I'd just learned the technique. So I tapped about every aspect of it, which is something you do with EFT. So I tapped about my hand shaking. I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat. And I tapped about all the memories I'd had from all the injections I'd had over the years. And I'd had many because of all the different countries. So I did all that tapping. And then the next day, the needle slid right in. All of that emotion and that fear that had been living inside of me the day before had totally released. And that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be on that side of the fear. I wanted to be on the peace side. So that's when I started really doing the work. It's like, okay, if it's just emotion, it's just energy stuck in the body, I want to find it and I want it gone. So that's really something that can help people keep in mind. Obviously, you try it out for yourself on something simple so that you can realize that it does the same thing. And then you can have that knowing inside of you and you can keep going. And it's a fun journey. We think it's hard because we've got so many big emotions to release, but it's actually a fun journey because we start to lighten up as we go. Right? Life becomes more fun. We can laugh more easily. We can sing more easily. I had so much tension in my head that I couldn't even sing some notes before, and now I can. Right? So my voice has changed.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Gosh, that's such a great way to put it, that it's energy. Otherwise, yeah, you can become attached to it and wonder if you even want to release it or what it's going to do to you, or there can be another emotion, fear or something attached to whatever. And so, yeah, to think of it that way, that really changes it. In my head, that really changes it. So tell me what it's done for relationships in your life.
It's made them much more pleasant because I can, I know it's up to me, right? I take responsibility for everything that happens. So if something doesn't go well, I go inside and feel it and I work with it, right? So that the energy has released. So I think of forgiveness as me letting go of all of the energy, right? I don't have to do anything to the other person. I don't have to say I'm sorry or say I forgive you or any of that. It's all about me and releasing that energy. And if I can come to total peace with what happens, I know I've forgiven. So if I had had an argument with someone and I do that work and come back to them and I can just relate to them totally like nothing happens, then I know that I've done my work. So relationships are great.
Ah, wow. And there's so many people that unfortunately hang on to bitterness, right? And which only hurts you. So often I found that the other person has no idea that you're even mad at them. They have no idea that they made you uncomfortable or whatever it is that you think they did to you. And so, but then hanging on to it, it seems to grow and fester.
It does. It's like a wound. It's literally like a wound inside, right? Because now I can feel inside, right? It feels like a wound, but we just aren't aware at that deep level when we do a lot of this work. So yeah, think of it like a wound, and then you might be more inclined to work on it.
Yeah, no kidding. Get the wounds out.
Yes.
Yeah, get the wounds out, make the inside prettier, right? With the
Yeah,
wounds.
let it heal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, where does somebody start with this? Like, what's the very beginning, for somebody?
The very beginning is becoming aware. So noticing during the day, maybe ask yourself, maybe set a timer every hour, ask yourself how you're feeling right now. And that makes you start becoming aware of how you're feeling. Because until you have that awareness, you can't do anything about it. So that's always the first step. You're kind of adding like a little distance between you and the emotion. Oh, it's me, I'm right here, but I'm frustrated or whatever. Right? There's that noticing. And then, if you learn EFT or something like that, um, start using that. But the noticing is the first thing always.
Yeah. So if people want to learn EFT, where do you direct them?
Well, there are many, many different websites, but as I said, a lot of people have gone more positive. So on my website, I do have a free PDF download of my 5 steps to profound inner peace, which talks through these steps that we talked through today. And at the end, it has my 2-page summary of EFT. So you could go there. I've also got some videos on my YouTube channel that explain it.
Okay. And your YouTube channel is?
It's just my name, Ann Hince, ANNHINCE.
Okay, .com. Right. And so,
Right, that's the website. On
yeah.
YouTube, it's I think at Ann Hince.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I've been on your website and there's so much there. Like there is a lot of information, a lot that people can learn. And you also have physical proof, a lot
I
of physical
do.
proof.
Yes,
Yeah.
the X-rays are on there. Yes. Having an engineering background, I kind of like that I've got some, this is definitely happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell about some of that physical proof that you have on there. Like,
Okay, yeah, I have X-rays from 11 years ago and then late last year that show the physical changes. So my jaw has centered. It was way off to the side. It's much more centered. My let's see, my neck has straightened. It used to be totally bent. It's more straightened now. It looks like my tooth roots have grown. I used to have my lower front teeth used to wobble. They were quite loose, and those have definitely grown, and the others look like they've grown too. And my head is just much more symmetrical than it used to be. I haven't X-ray. I haven't found it, but from years and years and years ago, and it was just such an awful shaped skull. But it's kind of nice to see that it's becoming more symmetrical.
yeah, that's amazing. Well, and then you had an EEG as well, talking about the brain waves and
Yes,
yeah.
yes, my brain waves are. I mean, I didn't have them before I started this work. That obviously would be ideal to have something to compare them to. But I do have a lot of the gamma brain waves, which are the really high frequency brain waves. And not, the person I had them taken with kind of thought that you would have those maybe when you were meditating, right? That would be when they would show up more. But she noticed mine weren't there even when I was talking to her, right? So they're there a lot of the time, which surprised her. It surprised me, but that's because this work changes the base of who you are. So I think these brain waves are what we talk about when you have a high frequency, a high vibe. I believe now through what I've gone through that it's because of this work, it's those brain waves changing so that you have more of those high frequency waves.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, really, so often people look at things and they go, oh, yeah, that's not for me, or oh, geez, is it the truth? Whatever. Well, you have physical proof if people want physical proof, right? And scientific proof to back it all. And it's life-changing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about being in alignment, right, and being balanced, and now, doing this work has unbalanced. I'm trying to get my mind around the two different words. Um, we want to be in alignment, but to become in alignment when we're not takes some becoming unbalanced again, right? So as I release my neck in one area, it has to balance again in another area, right? So we have to become unbalanced before we can become balanced again. I think we're seeing that worldwide. We are becoming unbalanced, but I do believe eventually we will come back into balance or into alignment, just in a new way.
Interesting. Interesting. I will look forward to that.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how things work like that sometimes, right? I so many things that you kind of have to, like cleaning your closet, really, right? Like you take everything out of your closet and you have this huge mess. Well, it looked a lot better before you started cleaning your closet. But so you've got this giant mess, but then you put it all back in where it belongs and get rid of what you don't want and all that kind of stuff. And you have a whole new closet that is so much better than
Right.
what you had before.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that happening inside my body, right? Connective tissue, it's, I said it was tied from my left cheek all the way down to my right foot. And it held my body in that position. So now as I release that, each part of my body gets to become its own part, right? Without being tied to those other parts. So I see that happening inside of me, but I also see it happening outside of me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So good. And this has been so great. And I can't believe we're out of time, but we are. Ann, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing everything that you've shared.
You're welcome. Can I just share about my retreat that's coming up?
Go right ahead. Please
Sure,
do.
in July, I have a retreat coming up that's for women who've experienced a loss, any loss, right? It doesn't matter, but we're going to go through these steps. We're going to work on it this way with these techniques that we've talked about. So I would love any of you who are interested to come along to that with us.
Okay. And they can get information on that on your website?
Yes, under the events. Yes.
The event. Okay. All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ann. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And until the next time, be blessed.